Listening to podcast is no replacement for Listening to podcast is no replacement for real training. While we attempt to provide accurate commentary, we hold no responsibility on how you use the information we provide. Get medical training. In the blink of an eye, everyday order can be replaced with once-in-a-lifetime chaos. Be prepared. This is the Civilian Medical Podcast.
Welcome to the Civilian Medical Podcast. This is episode 21. I'm glad to be back. Skinny Medic, you had to run solo on the last episode. How'd it go?
I know, it was pretty sketchy, like being by myself. Like I feel like I was drowning there for a little bit, but hopefully it went okay. We'll find out from the listeners, awesome. I'm sure.
Were you like, I don't know what to do with my hands? Car ran real good?
Yeah, I'm just going to hold them in front of my face and kind of wave them around a little bit. I was like, this is so weird. Like, Sean's so much better interviewer than me. I just like nod and say yes, and nobody can see me nod now. So like all he hears me, yeah, sure. Sounds great. Yeah.
I just Googled interview questions and I just read them verbatim. That's all. There's no art to it. There's no nothing. You could do it. I'll send you the website. Yeah.
We would definitely not be where we're at if it weren't for you. So
no, we wouldn't be. I had to pursue you for like 2 years to finally do this podcast.
It was a heck of a courtship.
But now, we've got a fantastic relationship. We make each other very happy. So I think everything's good to go.
We just got to work on our communication skills. Sometimes.
And by that, you mean me, because I'm awful at it sometimes. So what we wanted to talk about this week was something a little bit tough to talk about. This happened a couple weeks ago now. And how do you want to phrase this? How do you want to lay down our topic?
So yeah, this is it's a very touchy subject. I mean, we want to be respectful to what happened, but the moment it happens, I start getting messages about, hey, I wish you guys would talk about this, or wish you would do a video about it and stuff like that. But it's about the mass killings that we see get publicized on the news, and not to get too political about it, but they do. They get publicized greatly on all the major networks. And so this one, the latest one right now that we've seen on the news is the El Paso, Texas, the WAL-MART shooting. So kind of want to talk about the civilian response to a mass killing. So if you're at Lowe's, Walmart, or wherever, just mind your own business, and a dirtbag comes in there and wants to do some bad stuff, how are you going to respond to it? How are you going to protect yourself? How do you protect your family? And then how do you respond?
100%. I think this is really important. And in fact, this is something that I focus on so much in my training, but not just my training, but my actual thought processes. When I go into places, I think about this. If this was to happen, what would I do? It's the reason that I carry a firearm every single day. Have it right here with me like I always do. And it's the reason that I carry med kits with me every single place that I go. Because look, I've mentioned this 100 times. If I was watching Batman opening night and I was in the Aurora theater, I mean, this guy walks in, throws a smoke grenade over to the other side of the theater, opens fire wearing body armor and a mask and everything else. People didn't realize it wasn't part of the movie for a good few seconds. And then you just think about the chaos and you look at the after effects and you look at the forensic photos and the analysis and look at the cone of fire and where those rounds hit. I mean, that affects me in I sit outside his cone of fire. Not because I think every single possible thing would be the same, but because that's the empirical evidence that we have so far. And so I try to sit outside of that just to give myself that best chance. But if you do survive the first volley, if you're not injured beyond the point of reacting or acting, then what? Like, do you draw your firearm? Are you able to do it in the dark with the lit movie screen with the guy backlit? Are you able to get that shot off? And then if you survive that, then what happens? And that, I spend a lot of time thinking about that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same boat. Like I'm going downtown, I make sure, all right, I'm going to put my extra magazine on, like I did the other night. Like Kenneth and I took the kids downtown. It's a Friday night. I was like, I already got my gun on me. It's already on me, but I'm going to slide my extra magazine on. but when you go to the movies, like Kenneth and I, it was funny. Like I got a text message. I was teaching a CPR class, and I get a text message from Kevin, who helps pack orders and helps me teach classes. And he said, "Hey, your wife just walked in. At least I know there's another gun in the room." And I was like, "Yep, she's got a gun." And I was like, "And she has a medical kit on her, guaranteed." And so he starts laughing. So we're having a conversation back and forth. And so I get a text message from my wife, and she's like, "Hey, Kevin's in the room on the opposite side." She's like, "At least I know I got a gun partner now." And I was like, "Yep." And so like I'm laughing at this conversation going on between a friend and an employee, Kevin's both, and my wife, and they're both talking about how they have a gun on them, they have a flashlight, they have a med kit on them, and if something goes down, they're going to work together. So it's we think about that, but going to Lowe's on a Saturday morning at 8:00, I don't know that I say that's not in the front of my mind. I'm being honest with you. They're like, "Oh, there's gonna be an active shooter at Lowe's," and like I'm like, "All right, I just got to get these screws, get these nails, get this pipe that I need, or something stupid, or this light bulb that I need because Mrs. Skinny Medic's killing me with this new house." I don't really think about, what if I have to draw? What I have to make that 25-yard shot, that 25-yard headshot because this guy's wearing body armor. Like that's not in my mind, and I don't think it's probably in most of our minds. But now we have you kind of have to think about that kind of stuff, and you have to be ready all the time. And there's been plenty of posts about the hashtag No Days Off, and I think that's true. Like you can't just say, "I'm gonna run the Lowe's real quick, I'm gonna run the Walmart real quick, I'll be right back," and not put your firearm on, not put some kind of medical supplies on.
100% agree. So the one that I think we were going to talk about first off was, or maybe just focus on this one, was the Walmart killing in El Paso, Texas.
Yeah, like we can talk about some other ones and kind of some things, but since this was the freshest one, I kind of thought we could think about this one. This is where, as far as the latest data and how this changes all the time, that I could find, was 22 people killed and 24 were injured, and the age ranges are from 2 to 82 years old. And then the police took 6 minutes to get on scene. Took a little bit longer to actually take him into custody. I could not find the time frame as far as EMS, what their response looks like, but I guarantee that they were staging 2 miles away. So I wasn't able to find that data. Once El Paso releases the after action report, then we'll be able to see that stuff more clearly. But right now we're just kind of going on news articles and stuff like that. So just kind of wanted to think about this one because the great age range we have there with age 2 to 82, like that's a big spread of age and how people react different to trauma, the medical supplies we carry, things like that.
100% agree. That age range right there, I'm like, oh man, I don't carry MPAs for a 2-year-old. I carry MPAs 28 French for me. And yeah, and like a 2-year-old, I mean, we're gonna have to rethink how we apply tourniquets and things like that.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was. We can talk about it, but like that 2-year-old is going to react differently to some of the supplies that we normally carry. So maybe we think about improvised medicine. We know that 2-year-old probably is not going to work with a cat tourniquet. So we think about adding a pressure bandage. We're going to put a pressure bandage on that kid. The 82-year-old, I'm thinking like, all right, he or she is probably, got arthritis. There are maybe on blood thinners. Like, how are they going to react to this? They could even just be a fall patient that they've tripped and fell, and they've got a broken hip, broken leg, a broken arm, broken wrist, caught themselves. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. Just kind of thinking like, all right, let's think about the 1,000-foot picture and go down. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff to think about.
There is so much. Let's see. Well, I guess let's start it off by, let's say that you survive the active killer and the threat is neutralized. You've gained the advantage over the threat. The first thing I think about is scene safety. Like, is it safe to be here? In the Boston bombing, there's a video shortly after the bombs went off, and there's somebody filming. There's people running around, hands on head. There's barely any first responders helping anybody because they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And finally, in that video, the guy says, "Man, what happened?" The other guy says, "It was a bomb or something." And then the other guy says, "Is it safe to be here?" standing in the midst of blood and people screaming and injuries and smoke and bags, abandoned bags. Is it safe to be here? And that is such a profound moment in that video, because I'm like, no, literally probably not safe to be there at all. And it's just nice to see somebody kind of grasp that. And, you know, am I safe? Have I gained the advantage over the threat? And if not, what do I need to do so? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, if you're involved in a situation where it be like in New York City when the guy rented the truck F-250 and ran over people, you know, you have to think about scene safety and about, you know, secondary explosions, secondary issues, because face it, they sometimes are trying to go after the first responders that are responding to the scene. You know, they want those secondary devices going to go off 15 minutes later after fire, EMS, and rescue and police have come in. Now they want that secondary explosion to go off, because now they can get 25 first responders too. So that's, you know, a plus for them. It's like bonus points. And so you do have to think about that. You think, you know, is it safe to be here? And do I need to move? And you have to think about your safety first, or, you know, and I say you, thinking like including your family and stuff like that, because you can't help anyone if you get injured or hurt. And, you know, I've said before that I would like to say, hopefully, that I'm going to be able to run towards the fight, and that kind of depends on the scenario. But my wife and kids are super important to me.
Yeah.
They're number one. So I'm going to get them to safety. And at the Walmart shooting, I think about, you know, there's chaos, people running, there's limited exits, you know, and we typically, as humans, we've always been taught safety in numbers. So you want to try to do that, but then this is not the time you want to think safety in numbers. You want to try to get away from the crowd, get away from the herd. And even psychologically, if you coming through the left side of Walmart at the garden center, and that's where you parked, psychologically, we will want to go out that same exit. You know, we were going to like, all right, I got to get to the garden center. That's where my car is. That's where my stuff's at. I got to get to my car. And we will try to go out that exit. And that's not the right game plan for right now. So you really have to think about that and pre-plan that to break the mindset.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned safety in numbers, and if you would like to see the absolute worst example of that in the universe, in the mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, when the shooter who was filming the entire thing on a GoPro walks into that back room, he turns left and fires into a mass of a pile of human beings that were they all just piled into a corner. Then he turns right. In the far right corner, there's another pile of human beings. These are people who are alive, who went over there and they found safety in a group of bodies, and they basically just kind of dogpiled in these corners, and they were just I don't even want to use a euphemism or anything, like they were easy targets. They didn't make it difficult whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And then you think about a Walmart. I mean, yeah, exactly what you just said. Wherever you parked is where you're going to try to go out. But the thing that we need to focus on is, I mean, what's at the back of a Walmart? There's doors everywhere. Trying to get to the opposite of where the bad thing that's happening is happening, I think, is a huge thing. And, you know, restaurants, they usually have a kitchen exit, right? So it's important to think about those things as well.
And, you know, for the most part, most of these are lone shooters. There's only, you know, if there is multiple shooters, they've always been within eyesight of each other. But it's still something that, like, you have to think about, because you know that they're planning on that. So, you know, just because they have one shooter down doesn't mean, or they have one secured, that there's not someone else running around. There's not a secondary person that's still.
And if you would like to learn more about that, exactly, Joseph Robert Wilcox, 31-year-old male in Las Vegas, Nevada, a gun-toting couple had killed 2 police officers, walked into a Walmart. The man was pushing a cart full of guns, or cart with guns in it. Basically walked up, shot some rounds in the air, said, "This is a revolution," started walking that cart to the back because he wanted to have a shootout with officers. Joseph Robert Wilcox decided that he was a concealed carrier and that he was going to take care of this. He carefully stalked the man through the Walmart, lined up to take a shot, and the man's partner, his wife, I believe, walked up behind Joseph Robert Wilcox and shot him in the head, and he died. So it's important. And if you're running to the back of the kitchen, the back of the restaurant, the back of the Walmart, whatever it happens to be, have that situational awareness going on and have the possibility that could be a thing. You know, sometimes they try to flush you to the obvious exits, and they could have an ambush sitting there.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to like our next point we were talking about. Is your concealed carry versus an AK or versus an AR-15. Like that's not the best spot you want to be in. And I would love to be able to walk around with an AR-15 strapped to myself all the time. With an ACOG and suppressor ready to go, but that's not the case here. So does that dictate what you're going to carry concealed wise? Would you rather switch out that pocket pistol for a Glock 19, or would you like, man, I'd really like to have a Glock 17, or switch out your little revolver, your 38 revolver, going, it's probably not the best thing I want to carry right now.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough one. So in Walmart in El Paso, Texas, the dude started murdering people in the parking lot, and once he went from there, he walked into the front doors and started shooting people there, and then basically stalked people, targeting a specific race of individuals. It appeared from all the news reports that I've read and some of the interviews with people who witnessed the things that went on. But yeah, he was in the parking lot, and you hear those gunshots. And where was I just the other day? I think I was at Costco, and just heard like a big banging that was not in the ordinary. And we as human beings have something called like a processing delay or processing bias, where we try to rationalize what that sound might possibly be that's within the realm of what actually might be. And I think because I end up thinking about these things so much that the second I heard that loud banging, that loud pounding, I immediately went into action, kind of went around a corner of an aisle and just stood there for a second, just so I could process what was actually happening. I didn't stand there in the middle of the aisle just kind of looking around. It turns out that it was just hail, but it was a loud bang, and I never want a processing delay to stop me from trying to do what's best for me and mine. So we need to, you're in Walmart, you're near the front door, you hear what sounds like loud bangs outside. Take a second. I'm not saying draw your gun and get down on all fours and like crawl around the corner or something. I'm saying get somewhere where you might have a little bit of cover, or if not cover, cover is probably best, right? But cover or concealment, either one. And then process things, but get safe, then process.
Yeah, I had a similar incident. I was at an Ingles with my little girl. She's probably 3 or 4 at the time. She's walking good, so we're just kind of strolling through, and someone popped several balloons across the store, and I remember that sound, and I was like, just the way it echoed, it was like pop, 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 and it wasn't like one pop balloon, but it was like probably 4 or 5 balloons, and I remember like I grabbed my little girl and like almost shoved her to the ground behind something, and I drew before I even thought about what happened. And I'm being completely honest with you guys. Drew, and I was like, oh, okay, that was not gonna like it. Kind of same thing. Like I was getting behind the I don't remember what aisle we were on, but kind of the same thing. Stepped out of the middle of the aisle, stepped against something to give me a little bit of cover, and was like, okay, that was not gunfire. I'm gonna reholster. Looked around, like no one saw me, and I was like, okay, we're good. Yeah, but I was like, oh gosh, but it was kind of like that instinct. I kind of swept my little girl to the ground, and I had it. I drew, and I was like, ooh, that was fast. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna look around. Nobody saw me. No little old lady. I didn't scare anybody. Luckily, I have a good relationship with all the law enforcement around my area, so I would have, probably been okay. But like, hey, look, this is what happened. This is my bad, guys.
But yeah,
but it definitely.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, like, I definitely think about that now. Like, there's been times where I've only been able to carry a pocket pistol, and then sometimes we're going to Main Street, and I'm like, oh, this is like in my head, I'm thinking this is a great target. So I will like, all right, I'm gonna take my Glock. I'm gonna put an extra magazine. But then if I'm going to just go to Lowe's, there's been plenty of times where I put a little pocket pistol in my pocket just so I can hit the checkbox of concealed weapon. Boom, checkbox, done. Like. And it's probably not the best one to have on me, but it's just checking a box. So now I'm like, what if that would have been that? That'd been a really crappy situation to have a little. Even we'll go a single stack 9mm like the Glock 43. I'm like, ooh, that's only a few rounds versus an AK. Like that's not what I want to do.
Yeah, that's tough choices because I mean, we've said it before, carrying a gun is incredibly inconvenient. Carrying a med kit is incredibly inconvenient, but I don't do things because they're convenient or not. I'm carrying whenever I feel like, oh, I don't want to carry this. I have to always look back and be like, look, I'm carrying this because of things that happen. And that med kit, I'm carrying this because of things that have happened, not things that I think are going to happen, because of things that have happened. And if the 1 in a million or 1 in, 300 million chance comes up of me being in that situation, I don't want to be sitting there with, I don't want to say with my whatever in my hand. I want to be ready to do whatever I can. If I survive the initial volley, if I'm able to be in the right place at the right time, doing the right things to the right person, I just want a chance, right? I want to be harder to kill. I know I'm not impossible to kill. I just want to be harder to kill. And I want the people around me to be harder to kill because I carry that medical stuff as well. So to get back to your question, your concealed carry weapon versus an AK, yeah, that's like an impossible choice, right? I see a dude with an AK, pretty much nowhere you go is really going to be too safe for that. I mean, that's a 30 caliber bullet coming pretty dang fast. So it's going to go through a lot of stuff. And it's not a fair fight at all.
No. And then the thing I've started thinking about more about as I get older is about my physical fitness. Like, how am I able to, now you're talking about running, because you probably have run for cover concealment. Maybe you've moved some people out of the way to kind of get them out of sight, out of mind. What about like your physical fitness level? Like, are you able to move and do stuff and then still able to provide patient care? And that's a tough question because now your adrenaline's up, you've run across to the back of Walmart or wherever, and you're out of breath, and you can't provide patient care. You can't do anything because your heart rate's 120, you're breathing 30 times a minute, and you're not in the physical shape that you could be. And we don't all have to be superhero, special forces, kind of style, but I think that's a serious conversation that we should have as we get older, as dads and things like that, to think about, like, I don't want to be 320 pounds. I don't want to be, out of breath when I get out of the chair. For me, like, I still want to be able to play with my kids. Like, I love wrestling with my kids. I want to be able to play sports with them outside. But at the same time, like, I want to make sure that I can pick my kids up and take them where I need to move.
Yeah, 100%. And I've talked to a lot of trainers on one of my other shows, We Like Shooting, where that's like a big thing. They're like, you got to be physically fit. You got to be physically fit. And I'm like, yeah, it is easy to say that. It is easy for someone to hear that. But I'll tell you what, people go to a skinny medic class and, get in those scenarios where your adrenaline's pumping and your heart's racing and you're kneeling down on concrete and you're simulating packing a wound and putting on a pressure dressing or a tourniquet, and you're doing triage on multiple casualties, and tell me, and be honest. Don't tell skinny medic. Be honest with yourself. Could you do that? Could you have dragged them away from that scene? Could you have dragged them to safety? And just be honest with yourself. If the answer is no, then make changes. And if the changes are hard, like, look, I get it. I'm a big old fat dude. But I'm reasonably athletic. I can run, I can carry, I can drag stuff. I can do the things that I want to. And I'm honest with myself about my physical fitness level. I play hockey, and I'm fat as well. So just because you're fat doesn't mean that you have no physical fitness, but you have to be honest with yourself more than anything else that is out there.
Yeah. I mean, so even like could you drag your girlfriend? Could I drag my wife? Could I move my wife to safety? Like, that bothers me. I'm like, yes, I want to make sure that I can pick Candace up and move her where I need to be moved. And, so to think about that and to be able to do that is something that I work on. That's why I run. That's why I bike. That's why I lift weights. I'm not going to win Mr. Universe or Mr. Old Man anytime soon, but, just the fact that I want to make sure that I'm in good physical shape.
Yeah, it's super important. And again, like, overweight is fine. Not being able to do the things that you need to do to save the people that you need to save, that's not fine. And we just have to be 100% honest with ourselves and make the changes that we need, so that when we are honest with ourselves, that we come to the right conclusion and we do the right things.
And then I was going to read this email I got in from our friends at VanQuest just today,
Oh, yeah.
just to kind of, they were picking on me, so I'll read it. It says, hope all is well with you and your family. And yes, comments are true. You should be known as medic, formerly known as skinny. You're not chunky, but you're not Toy Story Woody thin either. So
That's hardcore.
That hurts.
That is hard.
Michael at VanQuest, I appreciate that. So I sent him a nice email back and said I thought dad bods were cool. So he emails me back and said he has a dad bod too. So and his wife approves. So I'm not sure if she approves of my dad bod or his dad bod, but we'll let him make that choice.
One or the other. I assume it's you, because I mean you're basically
Yeah, I would assume his wife is listening to our podcast and stuff.
She needs to, for sure.
Yes.
All right. So making sure that you have an evacuation plan, making sure that you have an idea of where you might go, making sure that you are physically fit enough to do the things that you might be called upon to do. What your tactics and your strategy is your concealed carry up to snuff against an AK. If not, it's like a choose your own adventure. Just don't choose wrong and find the dragon. So what's next?
So, there was a big push for this run, hide, fight mindset. And while I agree with part of it, there was Mr. Guns and Gear and James Yeager both came out with two different versions, and take James Yeager for what you like or don't like about him, but his phrase was actually really good. So what we had taught in the past was run, hide, fight is that the moment there's something bad going on, you run. You get away from the threats and escape the violence. If you can't run, then you hide. And this is, you barricade yourself into a room. You hide into the best hiding spot you can find. You are hiding. This is like a hide and go seek for your life. So you make sure it's a really good one. Not up under a desk, not under something that's easily found, but this is for your life. So you make sure you have a really good hiding spot. And the moment that the person comes into the room, you fight, and so you fight for your life. And then this may be that you throw whatever at them. This could be throwing baseball. Like I've seen the video that throw baseballs, and typically these people only have a plan A. So in all reality, the moment you can throw them off plan A, they'll panic. So you fight for your life, you tackle them, you realize there's something bigger than you going on, and you fight for your life. But James Yeager and Mr. Guns and Gear both came out right after this and said that there was a different version of that, and it said you run towards the fight. You draw your weapon or your flashlight, and you go towards the violence. And the hide part is you're trying to find cover and concealment while you are running to gain the advantage. This guy's got an assault rifle, AK at the time, and you've got to close that distance to make it. So you're getting cover, getting concealment. You're trying to avoid him, but you're gaining ground on him. And then the moment you can make the shot, you take the shot. And this guy's wearing body armor, so we have to at least make the headshot. Or a groin shot, or right in the pelvis would be a great spot to shoot this guy as well. So there's two different versions, and I've talked about in other podcasts that if I have my wife and kids, I'm gonna exit. I'm not gonna put their lives in danger and risk their life even more by going towards the fight. They're number one. But if I'm by myself, then heck yeah, like I'm gonna go to the fight, and we're gonna be on the podcast next week, and I'm gonna be all still amped up about it, talking about how I was at the right place at the right time, and hopefully I was able to make that shot, that 25-yard shot. I'm like, his head was awful small, but I made it go like a melon.
The right time, the right place, the right skills, the right gear. That's it. That's exactly. So this is another moment, just like I talked about fitness, where we have to be really honest with ourselves, right? Joseph Robert Wilcox in WAL-MART in Las Vegas, he thought that he had all the tools, and I don't know that he was 100% honest with himself because his situational awareness was not there. and he died because of it. And this is not to criticize him, because man, like, he wanted to end this, and I think that's heroic on its own. But we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, do I want Skinny Medic or James Yeager or Mr. Guns and Gear? Do I want those guys running towards the fight? Hell yeah, because they've thought about it, they've trained for it, and I trust each and every one of their skills to do the things that they need to do. And I hope that I would also be one of those people who has the right skills, the right gear, and the right mindset to do the things that I need to do. But be honest with yourself. You don't need to tell us. You don't need to tell your wife, your girlfriend, your husband, your kids, your priest. You don't have to tell any of them. But be honest with yourself. So when you make your plan and you think about what you're going to do today in the event that it happens tomorrow, that you don't do the wrong thing. Just be honest with yourself. Know what your skills are. Know what your deficiencies are. Fix them, or make sure you have a plan of action that caters to them.
Yeah, I would definitely take Mr. Guns and Gear on my team.
Yeah.
That Joker scares me.
100%. Yeah. I always want Mr. Guns and Gear on my team. So it's when we have to do the content creator kickball teams. I guess you and I will be captains, and we'll just have to pick. We're both going to go for Mike first up.
Yes, I think this is the next NRA event. We're going to have a kickball team, and we're going to do it. So
we should totally do that.
That'd be fun. That would be great.
We'll call it Run, Hide, Fight. It'll be amazing.
Yes. Perfect. Let's do it.
So, Schematic, say we have done the right things. We have survived the initial volley. We have gained the advantage over the threat, whatever that may mean, whether it's running, hiding, or fighting. Now we've got a lot of injured people, and we're still talking about the Walmart shooting in El Paso, Texas, started in the parking lot. So not only do you have multiple casualties, a lot of casualties, 22 dead, 24 injured, but you also have a huge area that you have to kind of cover as a civilian. And as the civilian response goes to a mass killing like this, how in the heck do you triage, especially 2 to 82 years old? I mean, we're going to be drawn to the kids because they're going to be the ones that, our heart mourns for the most. But they may not be the ones that are the easiest for us to save with either our skills or our supplies.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Once you can't start doing anything medical wise until the threat's been stopped. So once you stop the threat, then you can start doing patient care. But until the threat has not been stopped, they're still putting rounds down range, then you can't stop and do anything. You got to stop the threat. And we've talked about the whole March algorithm and things like that for that particular process. But, think about triaging. Yeah, you've got patients scattered everywhere. Like you said, the parking lot. There's walls that separate, those patients. So they're not even like open in the same area. But you have to be able to treat the ones that are savable. And it's a tough call. You're going to second guess yourself for the rest of your life if you made the right decisions. But you have to do what's best for the greater number of people. And we do this a lot. EMS is typically not the best at it. Our military men and women are really much better at it than we are civilian EMS. But we have to be able to triage patients. And even though Aurora shooting, like you can listen to that whole radio traffic on YouTube, and the first patients were brought in by the first 2 engine. They were so far away from Theater 9, not even close. I mean, they'd walked a long way, and that first 2 engine gets on scene, and he describes them like, oh, they're wearing a white hat, blah, blah. They'd walked a long way, and they're the first patients to get transported off that scene, and they were distracting patients. They were walking wounded, and they were the first ones to go off. Meanwhile, there's police officers screaming for help, that they need rescue. They need, EMS to transport these patients. So they just started throwing them in patrol cars. They got tired of waiting on rescue and EMS to get there. So, be able to triage and sort these patients to who I can save, who I can't save, and who really needs me is super important. You're going to have those distracting patients. And I say this in, kind of jest, but you're going to have that 19-year-old little girl who has a hangnail who is going to be screaming her head off about her finger. Meanwhile, there's someone who has got a gunshot wound to the leg, gunshot wound to the pelvis, gunshot wound to the chest. They're laying there, and those are the patients that really need you, not the little girl who's screaming about her hangnail. So in the past, we have EMS, so we've said, send them to across the street or send them wherever. But now we're kind of rethinking that. And we're like, well, maybe you should use her to help you. Maybe you take that little girl who's screaming about her hangnail and you tell her to hold pressure. I'm going to use my t-shirt right here to kind of hold pressure right here. I need you to hold this. I will be back. And so you kind of use them, and you do that, and you change their psyche. One is you took them from someone who's a victim that I was involved in an active shooter, a mass killing, to I was a hero. Like, I saved someone's life. And that little girl will be on all the major networks talking about how she was a hero because she held pressure on someone's leg. And I'm okay with that. Just let her, if she wants to think she was a hero, she was a hero, and let her do that. But you change her psyche. And so, you can use them. And we have to be careful when we're talking about, I mentioned that, tell her that you'll be back. And I listened to one of the Virginia Tech shooters, or survivors, and that's what she said. She said that the first responders stepped in there, and she was in the classroom ultimately where the shooter took his life. And she said that when rescuers walked into the room, they said, "Oh, these are all black." And I was like, man, that's incredible racist. Like, that's terrible. But what it was, no, they were saying they were all black tags. Like, the first responders thought they were all black tags, which means dead. And I was like, whew, like, that sounded really bad. And I'm like, but it was what they meant. And then so they started walking through these patients in this classroom, and they were like, oh, this one's going to die. Just leave her be. And that was her best friend, and her best friend ended up surviving. So I was like, can you imagine, like, you're shot in the back, first responders arrive on scene, and like, oh, this one's going to die. We're just going to keep on walking. And I'm like, and you end up surviving? Like, I would be incredibly ticked off. And this lady apparently is not, but I'm like, I would be extremely mad. But we have to be careful what we say, what we do, and we have to, really take a look at these patients and think beyond of, oh, they're going to die, and just keep on walking. Like, these are real patients. These are real people. These are moms and dads. These are grandmothers, grandparents, and these are someone's daughter or son at, age 2 that you're going to have to deal with. And so you have to have an organized way to triage them. And we've kind of talked about in other podcasts before. We'll kind of touch on it again. But, we have black tags. And those are people who are, unfortunately, they're dead. And we can see, we don't really have the true after action report released on this El Paso shooting. Hopefully soon we will. And we'll see all the patients' injuries. But for most part, generally, they are all chest and head shots. Just because those take up the most area on the body. So there's not a lot we can do for those victims who's been shot in the head. They're dead. And so unfortunately we can't do anything about that.
Real quick, if I can interrupt you just for one moment. I just I was going through from the Aurora shooting. I wanted to see some of the wounding epidemiology of some of the people. I just went through the 25 first people, and I categorized it by head injury, fatal, head injury, chest and back, chest, back, and neck. Or I'm sorry, chest and back, appendages, and neck. And what I came up with the first 25 people that were injured, I got 2 fatal head wounds, 6 gunshot wounds to the head, 3 to the chest and back, 3 to the neck, and 12 gunshot wounds to appendages. And that was just the first. I mean, this goes on and on and on and on. I just wanted to see if there was any pattern. And yeah, you're exactly right. So many of these, especially in the civilian world, are that chest and head and back and the axilla, the armpit, the neck, and everything else like that. So sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to throw that out there. No, yeah. And so we see that, in like the law enforcement, the military side, we see a lot of gunshot wounds to the arms and legs because they're wearing body armor. We're not wearing body armor to WAL-MART. And so Siri just picked that up too, by the way. Siri's listening to us. So you do see a lot of that. So we have to be able to say, you know what, this person has a gunshot wound to the head. I see brain matter. They're dead. Or this patient has 4 gunshot wounds to the chest. They're not breathing. They don't have a pulse. They're dead. And it sucks. But you have to do it because you never know when the lady who's 3 feet over from you has a gunshot wound to her arm who is bleeding out, that you can control that. You can save that person. It's a compressible hemorrhage. You can do it. Or the person who's 10 feet away who has a gunshot wound to the thigh
that's compressible hemorrhage. You can control that. You can save that person's life. So I bring that part up. There was a nurse on the Today Show, the major networks, who was doing CPR, and I commend her for helping. Thank you for getting involved, but she's doing CPR when there may have been other people who bled to death, or other people who may have been able to been saved. So you can't get bogged down in doing CPR on these patients like this. And unfortunately, it is what it is. But traumatic patients who go into cardiac arrest have almost a 0% chance of survivability because of the container's empty, they've bled out, or the pump has exploded. So there's real traumatic problems inside the body that just doesn't allow them to live anymore. So CPR is not a great idea in these situations. So then you see all these patients who are not survivable, and then you have a couple different colors that we think about, and these are universal across EMS. You have red tags, you have yellow tags, and you have green tags. Your green tags are your walking wounded. These patients are able to walk around. So you don't have to worry about them for the most part. They're going to be the ones that distract you, but you don't have to worry about them. If they were to walk around, you don't need them. Your red tags have a problem with airway, breathing, and circulation, and we can all fix that. Even with improvised medicine, you can start working on those issues. And then your yellow tags are your kind of in between. Like, they're awake and talking to you, but they're just not able to get up and walk around. But we have to concentrate on those red tags, the patients who have a problem with airway, breathing, or circulation.
Yeah, I could not agree more. 100%. Know what you can help with, know what you can't help with, and work with the people that you can help with, that you have the best chance of, actually making a difference. 100% agree.
Exactly. We kind of touched on that March algorithm, and we can kind of repeat it again. We've done 5 or 6 episodes with that, but it was massive bleeding, airway, respiratory, circulation, heat loss. So that's how we're just going to keep repeating that over and over and over again to these patients, and making sure that we can stop what's killing them. And we may have to be improvised medicines, improvised tourniquets, improvised chest seals. I may have to pull out blankets and towels from the WAL-MART shelf and start using as wound packing or making tourniquets. Maybe we pull some sheets off of the floor or wherever, and we're wrapping them around the leg and tying a knot. Maybe use something to get a mechanical advantage, like a windlass, and you're rotating and whatever we're doing, but we have to get the bleeding stopped. We probably are not going to have MPAs laying around for everybody, so maybe we just roll them into recovery position. Maybe that's the best way we can keep their airway open at this time. Or maybe we get another bystander and say, look, I just want you to hold this patient's head back like this, the head tilt, chin lift position. Or maybe we're going to roll this patient on the side. If they throw up, can you just make sure they keep it clear? We can kind of use that. There's plenty of stuff we could use for improvised chest seals at WAL-MART. Something that doesn't allow air to come through that chest wall. So plastic bags, duct tape. There's plenty of items we could look around the store and start making the medical kit that we need.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I never preach improvised stuff, but what I do is I make sure you understand why the things work the way that they work. Because if you understand why they work the way that they work, you have a much better chance of actually improvising something that actually works. Because it's not about the material. It's not even about the tool that you have. It's about understanding why it does what it does and why that is effective in stopping whatever you're trying to stop. And once you understand that, boom, you're good. Chest seal, gloved hand, plastic WAL-MART bag, have one of these. And I was actually looking again in the Aurora, chemical irritation was one of the injuries, and still got an attempted murder charge for chemical irritation. Non-gunshot wound. Her name was Kelly, and 2 counts of attempted murder, but she was basically treated for chemical irritation. She was probably loud about it. She was probably a distracting casualty, 100%. But yeah, definitely keep your eyes out for that. And those people can help if you can get them calm enough.
Exactly. We talked about the tourniquets. A lot of people want to use a belt and stuff like that. And belts, ultimately, even the Boston Marathon bombing, there was a lot of belts used, improvised tourniquets. But when they got to the hospital, they realized that those were not actually tourniquets, so to say, but they were pressure bandages. Nothing wrong with that. Like, they were just good pressure bandages. So you can use a belt, but you just understand it's probably very difficult to make a belt a tourniquet unless you have some kind of mechanical advantage, like something to use as a windlass. And this isn't a pin. This isn't a ball pin. Like, it's going to break with plastic. You're going to need something sturdy to be able to rotate. I was talking to some students this week, and I said, you know what? I just started breaking picture frames. I broke mirrors, picture frames, whatever, to start using those. And they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I'm like, yeah, try breaking stuff. Like, no one's going to say a word to you if you start breaking stuff at Walmart to make improvised tourniquets, things like that. So, no one says to you about wearing your pajamas to Walmart. They're definitely not going to say anything to you about breaking stuff. So I would start breaking stuff and making improvised tourniquets, even improvised stretchers, like how to move people to get them closer to the doorway. And we talked about that a minute ago, that these patients are scattered about, and you got to start to get them closer. So look at the Las Vegas shooting. Like, they used the gates, the metal like wall gates they had. They folded them down, started putting patients on it, started rolling across. Use chairs. There's plenty of chairs at Walmart. So you put patients in chairs and start rolling them across the store to get them closer to the exit.
Yeah, 100%. And just real quick, MARCH again stands for massive bleeding airway, respiration, circulation, and heat loss and head injury. So if you haven't heard that, if you've forgotten it, if you didn't know it when Skinny Medic just said it a few minutes ago, go back to one of our earlier episodes and listen to all those all over again. That's the great thing about those podcasts, is they're out there forever and they make excellent refresher material. So if you've forgotten even remotely, or you just want to touch up on that, they're out there, they're ready for you, and you can listen to them anytime you want, just to get back in the swing of things.
Yeah, definitely. Like, if you couldn't even recite that by memory, just run out, like spill it off like that, go back and listen to those podcasts again. Like, it's not going to hurt to listen to those 30, 45 minutes, hour-long podcasts while you're driving down the road, just to refresh on
100%. Now, we briefly touched on this already, that a lot of these injuries in the civilian wounding epidemiology, or in the civilian area, are going to be head, chest. There's a ton of them. So while you're working on your tourniquets, while you're practicing those skills and wound packing and pressure dressing, and making sure you've got all that stuff covered, don't neglect what you actually can do. Know how to open an airway, whether it's recovery position, chin lift, jaw thrust, head tilt, like any of that stuff. Make sure you know what you can do. Make sure you know what to do about respiration. Know the signs and symptoms of a pneumothorax and attention pneumothorax, and what the limited things that we as civilians can do about those things. So, don't neglect the realistic stuff for the fancy, fun, putting on tourniquets and packing wounds stuff, because that stuff is really important, especially to us as civilians.
Yeah, and none of us are carrying enough medical supplies to treat these patients. We're talking about El Paso or wherever. Like, I carry a lot of crap in my truck, and I don't have enough stuff for this. So improvised medicine, whether shouldn't be a plan A. It should definitely be in your wheelhouse, though. Your plan A should be a commercial grade stuff, and that's kind of what, like, the ankle kits, the pocket kits, like, that's generally stuff going to be for me or be for my immediate family. Everyone else gets improvised stuff, and so it should be in your wheelhouse, should be in your toolbox. But I wouldn't bank on that. That wouldn't be my plan A.
Definitely. All right, so let's bring this back around to the very front. We're in El Paso, Texas. We're at a Walmart. We hear some pops in the parking lot. We'll say we're, like right towards the front of the store, the produce and or the checkout stands or something like that. We hear that. We immediately go back into, don't forget the phases of care. I go off of the TECC, whereas Skinny Medic goes off of the TCCC. So what is it? Care under fire, tactical field care, and evacuation, right? And then, so I go off direct threat, indirect threat, and evacuation. So doesn't matter which one you do, but you hear those things. And just like Skinny Medic and I both have had examples here, we immediately seek cover concealment until we can actually figure out what's going on. Don't let a processing bias convince you that nothing's wrong. Figure out, to the best of your ability, where that came from and what your plan is next, right? Shooter then walks into the Walmart. Hopefully you've already gotten a little bit of distance or at least cover concealment between you and the bad guy. And then while you were approaching that cover and concealment, you're thinking about, what's my evacuation plan? I heard that in the front of the store, so maybe I'm going to head to the back of the store, or one of the exits like you mentioned, Skinny Medic, the garden center or something like that. We're thinking about that. We're thinking about, where do I get myself, my family, my loved ones, whoever happens to be with me? What's our best chance here? And you're not going to run down the main aisle that's in plain view of the front doors. You're going to go down a side aisle, and you're going to think this through the entire time. You're constantly going to be processing new information with an ultimate goal and plan, but none of the stuff is set in stone. Everything's going to be different. So you have to be able to kind of think on your feet. And this is when you decide, and this is when you're honest with yourself. Do I have the fitness to run? Do I have the skills to fight? Ultimately, you may be faced with a fight situation, and it doesn't matter if you have any skills or not. One of you is going to die, and it should always be the bad guy. But yeah, you're thinking about that, and you're honest with yourself, and that's affecting your plan. That's affecting your strategy. It's affecting your evacuation. If the advantage has been gained over that threat in some way, like someone shoots them, you shoot them, whatever it happens to be, we're watching out for reemergence of additional threats. We're watching for reemergence of the original threat. And then I don't know, in Walmart, I would feel like I would never be out of direct threat. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think about like the aisles are typically they're over your head. There's no clear way to see across the room, the store. So yeah, like I definitely think until I could get some guys that were able to provide security for me, it would definitely be dragging people behind counters. Maybe I can kind of work there, but yes, like and then that's what I would be. If I could get some people to hold security for me, like if they don't want to do anything else, like you stand right here, and they don't even have to have guns. Like you stand here. If you see anybody that looks running towards me, let me know. Like that way we can move. You don't have to necessarily have armed security looking out for you while you're doing patient care, but you could absolutely have someone who's just wants to be the good Samaritan bystander and say, look, I'm going to start doing some work here. You stand here. If you see anybody that looks really super sketchy, let me know.
If you see people starting to run by, tell me. If you see anything other than complete emptiness, let's work on it. Let's figure it out.
Because we can get tunnel vision. We start working on the improvised tourniquet. We start looking for how to make improvised chest seal. We will get tunnel vision and not see that now all of a sudden there's another group herd that are moving away from something or scattering. Like, why is that group running from something? What is going on? And I need another set of eyes to help me see that.
And choosing to respond with a firearm or medical supplies and knowledge, any of that comes at great personal risk, right? So understand what the repercussions are. Like, hopefully you've trained, hopefully you're confident in your skills and abilities, and hopefully you've made the decision that you want to be a helper. But don't forget what comes with that. Joseph Robert Wilcox, what came with his desire to be that guy, to stop this threat. It was death ultimately. And that sucks. And that's sometimes the way it goes. So just understand personal risk, gain the advantage over the threat to the best of your ability. If you're under direct threat, there's basically two prime principles. It's gain the advantage over the threat and consider hemorrhage control as can be applied by tourniquets. And if you decide that you've moved into indirect threat, that the advantage has been gained over the threat, that's when you're going to do the further medical interventions. But don't forget, evacuation is always the key. Never delay or defer anything to evacuate unless it's life-saving intervention. And if I was in that Walmart, those are the things that I would focus on. And honestly, I might not be at the front of the store because I would have hit the back of that store as fast as I possibly and safely and tactically could have to get out of there. And then once you get your family safe or whatever, once you kind of get a little bit of a gauge of the scenario that's going on, do you reapproach like Mr. Guns and Gear and James Yeager and Skinny Medic? Or at that point, do you escape the situation? Because I would never fault anybody for doing either one of those.
Exactly. 100% agree.
All right. So that was kind of just a lay down of how do we take the things that we teach in this podcast and in our classes, the direct threat, indirect threat evacuation, the care under fire, tactical field care and evacuation care, the March algorithm, the scene safety, everything else, the run, hide, fight, the Mr. Guns and Gear and James Yeager fight. How do we apply those to real life situations? And I think this was valuable. I think that anytime we can do this and try to apply it to a real life situation, it's valuable because, as I always say in classes, as I say everywhere, the more you think about it today, the less you have to think about it tomorrow, because you'll react in the way that you've thought about, considered, and carefully evaluated ahead of time. Just applying the new inputs to whatever program you're running. So anything to add on El Paso, or kind of applying what we teach to El Paso?
No, I think you're great. I appreciate you bringing up like the whole direct threat care thing too. So 100%
Awesome,
agree
man.
with that.
Well, let's talk about a product, and these are pretty baller. I'm pretty happy with these. What did you write down today?
So I know like you're a Halo fan too. The Halo chest seals are great chest seals. I've used both. I've used the Hyphen and the Halo chest seals. They both work. But the problem I've always had with the Halo chest seals is they're so freaking big. Like the packaging, like you almost need a backpack for them. So now, though, they've come out with a new Halo IFAC package, and it's the same size, if not a little bit smaller than the Hyphens, to be honest with you. But they're the same Halo chest seals that we like. You can get them in vented or non-vented chest seals, depending on which one you prefer, what you like. And this packaging is super nice, and we have our Halo chest seals, and they vent a little bit different than the Hyphens. People like the way they vent better. So now, if you're a Halo fan, you can get those, and they will fit in your individual first aid kit.
They are awesome, and I was actually able to get some from Skinny Medic at Medical Gear Outfitters. I got 2 of the vented, 2 of the non-vented. So thank you very much for those, by the way, Diedrich. That was freaking
You're
awesome.
welcome. Appreciate it.
And yeah, they're just a tiny bit bigger than the Hyphen, and it's the same Halo chest seals that you know and love. And I'm super excited. I actually have one in my Warrior Poet Society ankle kit that you can also get from Medical Gear Outfitters. And I replaced the Hyphen Compact. And I mean, like, the Hyphens are fine. I like them just fine. There's nothing. I don't know why it is, actually. I don't know why I prefer Halos over everything else, just because a lot of the stuff I learned on was Halo, I think.
Yeah. Like I said, they're great chest seals, and the fact that they're a lot smaller packaging is nice. And we've had them in stock for a while now, and they've been selling great. So a lot of people agree that they're good chest seals.
Again, Medical Gear Outfitters, you can search for the Halo, or there will be a link in the show notes to all the great stuff that you can get from that website. And I heard a little bit of a birdie told me that if you use coupon code Civilian Medical, you get 10% off whenever you go there, right?
Yeah, that coupon's always good to go.
That is awesome. That'll do it for this show. If you liked this After Action Report, let us know on Facebook, social media, whatever it happens to be, or the website, firearmsradio.tv. Is where the Firearms Radio Network shows are, or you can just go to civilianmedicalpodcast.com. I think that's right. Something like that. I don't know. I forgot. Anyway, Civilian Medical Podcast. You will find us. And Skinny Medic, I will talk to you very, very, very soon. And to the listeners, thanks for listening. And we really appreciate you. We will see you next time.
Find us and subscribe at civmedical.com.